The year 2026 may not be just a point in time. It may be a threshold, an invitation for you that it is time to live differently, not through surface-level effort, but through transformation at the root. Jung believed that a person only truly changes their life when they dare to enter an honest dialogue with the unconscious, when they ask themselves the kind of questions that reveal their true nature instead of chasing the image others expect of them. The beginning of any journey of change requires the presence of three elements: facing your own darkness, recognizing the true calling of your soul, and accepting that you must let go of what has expired. The three questions you're about to face can be seen as three keys. They do not just open doors, they illuminate the entire path. When you reflect on these questions, life will answer by taking you to where you need to go, even when that place frightens you. And before you step into each question, take a few seconds to be still. Are you truly ready to change your life in 2026? Or do you still want to keep running around inside the same old maze? Because sometimes just one right question is enough to shake an entire life. Question 1. What within me is asking to be seen? Number 1. The shadow wants to speak. There are tiny moments in the day that leave you confused without knowing why. A passing comment makes you far more upset than it should. Someone else's success suddenly makes you feel heavy inside. A simple request from a loved one triggers a stronger reaction than the situation warrants. Those moments are not random. They are like gentle knocks from the unconscious, what Jung called the shadow. It is not loud, but it is persistent. And if you keep ignoring it, it will find other ways to appear through overwhelming emotions, repeated choices, or failures you cannot explain. As Jung once said, what you resist persists. The shadow is not the evil part of you. It is simply the part that has been pushed into a corner for too long. Emotions you were never allowed to express as a child. Beliefs that were labeled as weak. Desires that were judged as inappropriate. All of that gets locked away like fragments of your true self. Jung believed that what we reject does not disappear. It only becomes rougher in the dark and finds ways to manifest in distorted forms. A person who always tries to appear kind may be the one who explodes most easily in anger. Someone who insists they don't need love may live in anxiety every time they face intimacy. The more we hide, the bigger the shadow grows. Imagine every part inside you as a child who was once silenced. It was not allowed to speak, to express, or to be acknowledged. It grew up in the darkness of memory, but it still carries the original need to be heard. When you find yourself overreacting to something small, that may be the moment when that child is trying to pull at your hand. You might feel uncomfortable when someone else is praised. You think you're jealous, but beneath that lies a deeper question. How many times were you belittled so that now a compliment for someone else feels like pain to you? Or when you feel irritated with someone who is too demanding? It may be the part of you that was once abandoned speaking up. It used to long for attention so much that now any touch on the topic of needs makes you uncomfortable. The shadow does not make you weak. It simply returns to you what you were never allowed to touch. In Jung's view, the shadow is the doorway to our maturity. If we are brave enough to approach it, the shadow will reveal the truths we need to understand about ourselves. The emotions we avoid are often the ones that carry the clearest messages. For example, anger is not just a hot temper. It might be a reminder that someone has crossed your limits. Sadness is not weakness. It may be a sign that you have neglected yourself for so long that your soul has begun to dry out. When we dare to name these emotions, we give them a place to exist. And once they have a place, they become less destructive. You can see this in everyday life. Many people seem to be doing fine, yet always feel an indescribable emptiness. They work well, have normal relationships, but still feel lost. That emptiness often appears when the rejected part begins demanding its voice back. It is like a room that has been locked for years and now the door starts creaking because it has been closed for too long. Every discomfort, Every repeated disappointment can be a message from the shadow. It says that something inside you is being forgotten. In fact, facing the shadow is closer to learning how to face yourself than you might think. You don't need to sit and overanalyze. You only need to be honest about your reactions. Start with very small moments. When was the last time you felt upset? What in that situation touched you? When you ask these questions, you are bringing the light of consciousness into the darkness Jung always spoke of. And that light is the beginning of change. When Jung said that change begins with making the unconscious conscious, he was not talking about an intellectual process, but about a genuine encounter with yourself. You don't have to be a psychologist to do this. You just need to listen when emotions arise. They are like guests coming to your house. If you lock the door, they will try to break in. But if you open it, they only want to say something and then leave. The shadow wants to be seen not because it wants to control you, but because it wants to free you from repetitive behaviors that you mistake for fate. If you always give up just as you approach something important, your unconscious may be holding a belief that you are unworthy. Only when you look directly at these things can you step into a new chapter of your life. In 2026, the shadow will not come like a storm. It will come through small tremors you can easily dismiss. But if you are sensitive enough to listen, you will see this is not a threat. It is an invitation to return to the true self you lost while trying to please the world. And when you dare to look into the shadow, the first thing you receive is not fear. It is a relief, because finally you no longer have to run from yourself. Number 2, the crack becomes the way in. And from the very place where the shadow begins to speak, something else starts to reveal itself. The cracks within you. They are not flaws as you once thought. They are like the first fissures in the ground before the rainy season comes, signaling that life is about to shift. Jung believed that where a person is most wounded is precisely where the seeds of their growth lie. That is why you cannot change your life without walking through the places that hurt the most. Sometimes the cracks look very ordinary. It might be the moment you feel you can no longer control your emotions. A single failure that takes you days to recover from. A small comment that you keep obsessing over. Those moments are like someone accidentally pressing on an unhealed wound. The pain is not there to make you weaker, but to remind you that something inside still needs care. In Jungian psychology, this is a sign that a neglected part is trying to return. It knocks with pain because that is the one thing you cannot pretend not to feel. Imagine holding a chipped ceramic cup. Every time you pour water into it, you're afraid it will slip or crack further. But that very chip shows you where it needs to be held more gently. It points to the weak K-spot so you can repair it or change how you use it. The inner world works the same way. You cannot mature by avoiding your fragile points. You only grow when you understand that the places where you break most easily are the very places that shape who you really are. Someone once shared that they always feel anxious when they are loved. Anyone who comes close makes them instinctively create distance. After a period of reflection, they realized that this anxiety came from experiences of abandonment in childhood. Every time someone treated them well, the old crack resurfaced, reminding them that they had been hurt in that exact place before. Even if they didn't want it, they responded by withdrawing to protect themselves. This is a typical example of the mechanism Jung described. A wound speaks up so that we look at it, not so that we run away. Jung once said that no healing occurs if we stand outside our wound. We have to step into it. That may sound abstract, but in reality, it is very concrete. Stepping in means that instead of fearing pain, you allow yourself to feel it. Instead of judging your emotions, you try to understand what they want to tell you. Instead of hiding your past, you look at it with gentleness. When you do that, the crack gradually becomes an entryway. It opens up inner territories you had never touched before. It gives you the chance to understand yourself more deeply, and from there, to change your life in a truly meaningful way. You might think of Japanese artisans who use the Kintsugi technique to mend broken pottery with gold. They do not hide the crack, nor do they try to erase it. They honor it because they understand that the piece becomes unique thanks to those fractures. In a sense, the human soul carries the same spirit. When you dare to look straight at where you once broke, you begin to fill it with the gold of understanding and compass. Scion. That is what turns you into your one-of-a-kind self, not some polished artificial perfection. The crack is also the meeting point between consciousness and the unconscious. At that point, you can both see what you once rejected and change how you respond to it. Most repetitive behaviors in life come from these cracks. For instance, someone who constantly chooses work that burns them out might be trying to fill an inner emptiness with achievements. Someone who always ends up in unsafe relationships may be unconsciously trying to reclaim something they never received enough of in the past. When you discover the why beneath your actions, you are no longer ruled by them. You begin to choose with awareness. The interesting thing is that the cracks always point you in the right direction as long as you're not afraid to look at them. If you feel uneasy whenever someone praises you, that may be a sign you need to learn to trust your own worth. If you feel anxious when someone expresses love, that may be your heart's way of asking to be healed from the belief that love inevitably means hurt. If you constantly want to control everything, maybe the deepest crack lies in the fear of losing control as a child. Every emotion, every reaction is a map, and the cracks are the red dots, showing you where you need to stop and look more deeply. In the new year, the cracks within you will not disappear. They are not meant to disappear. They are there to guide you. They only become dangerous when you pretend they aren't there. But once you recognize them as doorways, everything changes. You no longer see yourself as weak when you hurt. You see yourself as brave for daring to feel. You no longer treat the past as a burden. You see it as the place holding the most important clues about the person you are becoming. Question 2. Whose calling am I living by? Before moving on to the next question, let's pause for a moment. When the rejected parts of you have begun to speak, when the shadow and the cracks within have already revealed themselves, another quiet truth starts to appear. That many of your choices up to now have not come from your true self, but from your wounds, from expectations, from the voices others have left inside you. Realizing what within me is asking to be seen is only the first step. The next step, no less important, is daring to ask directly. So in the end, whose calling am I living by? Number 1, the call of the borrowed ego. There are moments when you stand in front of the mirror and suddenly ask yourself, am I living my own life or the life someone else wants me to live? That question is not new. It is the question Jung placed at the center of the individuation process. A person can only become themselves when they recognize which voice is true and which call has been borrowed. Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Yet most of us grow up in the noise of expectations. From childhood, we are taught to be good, to be excellent, to achieve something, to be worthy. And along that journey, we unintentionally lose our own voice, a small but deep voice that belongs to the essence of who we are. Jung called the patterns that society places on us the persona, the mask that helps us fit in. The persona is not evil. It helps us survive the world's judgment. But when we mistake the persona for our true nature, we begin to trade ourselves away for the sake of acceptance. We chase status, success, position, perfection, just to meet standards we never even stopped to ask if they were truly ours. That is the moment when the borrowed calling starts steering our lives. You can see this in everyday life. Many people pursue a career they do not love at all. But what they fear is not the job itself. They fear a parent's disappointment. They fear comparison. They fear being seen as useless if they choose a less safe path. They live according to the fears of others, not according to the truth inside them. When they succeed, they don't feel joy. When they fail, they feel as if the world is collapsing because they have built their entire life on a foundation that was never theirs. This is the trap of the persona. It lets us succeed by outer standards while leaving us hollow on the inside. From Jung's perspective, each person carries within them a unique trajectory, like a singular flight path. But when the borrowed calling grows too loud, we veer off that path. We think we are choosing, but in reality, we are simply repeating what was deeply imprinted in the past. Some people always have to prove themselves because they grew up under constant doubt from those around them. Some always choose partners who are out of reach because they are used to love being tied to pain. Some endlessly chase new achievements because they have never once felt enough, even when they have everything. That is not the true calling. That is the persona driving your life. And if some small part of you is quietly nodding as you read this, leave a small sign in the comments. Not for me, but as a sign you send to yourself that you have begun to hear the voice within. The truth is, most people do not live according to the calling of the soul, but according to the role they were assigned. You become someone impressive in the eyes of society, yet remain anonymous within your own inner world. You stay busy but feel no meaning. You are successful but not fulfilled. This is the clearest sign that you are living by a borrowed calling. Jung believed the true calling, the calling of the soul, always appears as a very particular feeling. It is quiet but persistent. It does not push you into fear. It pulls you toward life. You can recognize it in the smallest moments. When you do something and time seems to slow down. When you feel like yourself without having to try. When you know clearly what brings you peace, even if it brings you no money or praise. But to hear this calling, you must quiet the other calling, the one coming from outside. We cannot hear the true voice when the mind is full of invisible commands. One way to recognize that you are living by a borrowed calling is to ask yourself, if no one were watching, would I still want this? A simple question, yet very powerful. It separates the persona from the essence. It shows you which part of you acts to gain approval and which part acts because it is true to you. If the answers differ, it means the calling within you is being covered by the calling from outside. In many cases, we recognize the borrowed calling through a shock event, a period of burnout, a loss, a moment when you suddenly feel empty despite having everything. That is not a collapse. It is awakening. When the persona cracks, you finally begin to hear the echo of the true self. And often that echo is so soft that you must be silent to perceive it. Living by a borrowed calling is like being a ship that follows someone else's nautical chart. Living by your own calling is returning to the flight path you were born to take. The first thing you need to do in 2026 is not to change your whole life, but to identify which calling is steering you. If that voice is not yours, every effort will be wasted. Number 2, the soul wants to come home. The calling of the soul is not like the calling of society. Society speaks in the language of standards. The soul speaks in the language of feeling. When you do something that makes you feel light, warm, or as if you are finally breathing in the right rhythm, that is when the soul is speaking. Many people imagine the soul's calling. She will arrive like a burst of enlightenment. In reality, it comes like a ray of light slipping through the crack of a door at dawn. Very small. But if you pay attention, it changes the color of the whole room. You may already have experienced a moment like that. One evening, you sit in a cafe watching people pass by and suddenly realize your life is veering away from some direction you cannot name. Or when you're doing your usual work, your hands keep moving, but your mind is standing somewhere else, quietly asking, did I come here just to do this one thing? That is not exhaustion. It is a signal. The soul wanting to return home does not mean you must abandon everything. It means you must review what in your life is going against your true nature. Jung believed that within each person there is an archetype called the self. the center of the soul, where the inner compass of life resides. When you follow the persona, you move away from the self. But when you start to notice the things that make you feel truly alive, the self begins to pull you back. That is why you sometimes feel restless, as if you are living someone else's life. The calling of the soul also appears through things that move you in ways you cannot explain. Some people cry when they hear a piece of music without knowing why it touches them. Some see someone following their passion and feel a sudden ache in their chest because they realize they once longed for that too. Some discover they are happiest when creating something, no matter how small, simply because it is true to their creative nature. All of these feelings are signals. This is your direction. In psychology, there is a phenomenon called resonance. When something touches the deepest part of you, you do not need to analyze it. Your body knows, your heart knows, your whole presence knows. If you listen, you will realize the soul is always speaking. It's just that the mind is so loud that we mistake it for silence. One interesting point Jung emphasized: the soul's calling always comes with the feeling that is both fearful and promising. You will sense a vague anxiety, because the true path rarely looks like the safe path. But at the same time, you will feel a subtle lightness, as if your body knows this is the right way. That is the sign you have touched the self. And when the soul wants to come home, it does not only pull you inward, it also pulls you away from what no longer fits. You will find certain relationships becoming distant. Some habits start to feel tight. Certain ambitions you once chased no longer excite you. Don't panic. This is not a loss. This is the natural shedding that happens when you return to your true nature. Like coming back to your hometown after many years away, you only keep what truly belongs to you, and what doesn't will slowly fall away. The journey of the soul coming home is never entirely easy. It demands that you ask, who am I living for? And what do I want when I no longer have to prove anything? These questions are not meant to tear your life apart. They are meant to help you rearrange everything in alignment with your essence. And when that inner order is restored, you will find that life feels lighter in a natural way, not because it becomes less difficult, but because you are no longer carrying the weight of a borrowed life. Question 3. What am I willing to sacrifice to become myself? And when you have heard clearly which calling belongs to you and which one is merely an echo of others, a subtle yet sharp truth appears to live true. You will have to choose, and choice always comes with sacrifice. This is the moment when the third question softly raises its voice to lead you closer to your true being. What am I willing to sacrifice to become myself? At this point, if you can feel that delicate movement within, stay with this journey. A follow or a gentle tap on the like button is not just support. It is like a quiet vow you make to yourself. I am willing to go deeper. Number 1, letting go of false safety. This is the question Jung saw as the crucial turning point of the individuation process. Because to return to your true nature, you must leave behind the false safe zones. The places that look familiar, yet keep you standing still in a life that no longer fits. False safety is one of the strongest illusions of the mind. It is like a room with firmly locked doors, thick walls, just enough light to see everything but no windows. You stay in it so long that you begin to think it is the whole world. You grow used to not being challenged, not being confronted, not having to face the difficult parts of yourself. But it is precisely in that room that you lose the chance to discover what is waiting for you outside. Jung often emphasized that people only truly change when they dare to step out of a safe zone that has been built from fear. One of the most common forms of false safety is clinging to familiar roles. Some people spend their whole life playing the role of the strong one, always resilient, always carrying the load, always appearing fine. This role protects them in the eyes of others. but also imprisons them in a loneliness they don't dare to admit. To become themselves, they must give up that strong image. But that sacrifice means exposing a truth inside. They are also fragile, also tired, also longing to be loved without having to earn it. Or many people stay in relationships that have long since run dry, simply because those relationships feel familiar. They know full well they are no longer loved, no longer heard, no longer themselves. Yet they remain, because leaving means stepping into the unknown. Habit makes them feel safe, the old were. Out dynamic makes them believe that at least they know where they stand. But the soul never grows in confinement. It only expands when you dare to face the initial emptiness of freedom. False safety also appears in the form of old beliefs. There are beliefs you have carried since childhood but never truly examined. For example, I'm not good enough. I'm not allowed to fail. I wasn't born to do anything significant. These beliefs are like invisible locks you willingly wear. You think they protect you from being hurt, but they actually trap you in a version of yourself much smaller than who you could become. If you observe closely, you will see that false safety always comes with three signs. It is familiar. It feels comfortable on the surface, but deep down it makes you feel diminished. You may sleep, but not rest deeply. You may live, but not feel that you are living right. The calling of the soul that you heard in the previous part begins to press against these walls. It makes what was once familiar now feel cramped. It makes you restless when you imagine a future that looks exactly like the present. It makes you realize staying is no longer safe. It is a delay. So what does it mean to let go of false safety? It does not mean tearing down everything you have. It means asking, what am I holding on to purely out of fear? Not because it still holds meaning. That question is like a sword cutting through the fog of the stories you tell yourself. It demands absolute honesty. And it is that honesty that marks the beginning of real change. Letting go of false safety is not a loss. It is a return. A return to your natural desires, your true nature, your inner path that you have never dared to fully walk. And only when you dare to touch the unknown can you finally meet yourself, the wider, truer, more alive version of who you are than anything you have ever imagined. Number 2, taking responsibility for your own fate. But freedom always comes with responsibility. There is no one left to blame, no circumstance to lean on, only you and your choices. This is the moment many people hesitate because they can no longer say, I didn't have a choice. The responsibility Jung talked about goes deeper. It is the ability to look directly at how your inner world is shaping your outer life. He believed that the inner world determines the outer world. You cannot fix your life if you refuse to fix yourself. And to change yourself, you must accept that you are the source of many of the things you are experiencing. This is not about blaming you. It is about giving your power back to you. When you believe life happens randomly, you become a victim of circumstance. But when you see clearly that you play a role in what is happening, in your choices, your reactions, your beliefs, you become the one who leads. You no longer stand outside your own story. You become the one who rewrites it. Imagine someone who always ends up in relationships that hurt them. They might say they are unlucky that they always meet the wrong people. But if they look deeper, they will see that they keep choosing the same type of person. Those who are unavailable, unsafe, or unable to truly love. When they recognize that this pattern stems from an old belief, they begin to see their responsibility in the pain they have repeated for years, and that is precisely the starting point of transformation. Another example, someone always feels belittled at work even though they perform well. When they observe, they notice they always speak too softly, always avoid voicing their opinions, or apologize even when they did nothing wrong. When they change the way they show up, they change the way others treat them. Every shift begins from within. This is exactly the point Jung wanted to convey. No one, can rescue you from your recurring patterns, but you. No one can hand you the life your soul longs to live if you do not stand up and claim your role as creator. Taking responsibility for your fate is like deciding to take back the steering wheel of your own life. Even if the road has many curves, even if you are not yet a skilled driver, even if you once let others drive for you, the moment you place your hands on the wheel, you have already become someone different. Yet this responsibility feels so heavy that many people would rather stay in familiar suffering than step into freedom tied to responsibility. But freedom without responsibility is only an illusion. You are merely standing still while thinking you are choosing. When Jung said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do," he was emphasizing that no one can take responsibility for who you become in your place. What your parents did, what society expects, what circumstances bring, all of that has influence but does not determine your fate. Only you decide that when you dare to look within and adjust the course. Last step, transformational practice. After walking through Jung's 3 foundational questions, the journey does not end at understanding. Transformation only happens when you bring these questions into your daily life and begin a brutally honest conversation with yourself. There are no complex rituals here, only moments when you sit quietly with yourself and allow your soul to say what it has long wanted to say. Start with the first question. What within me is asking to be seen? Sit down in the silence of an evening. You don't need to force your mind to be quiet. Just ask yourself on this day, which moment unsettled me? It could be a comment that irritated you, a situation that made you lose your temper. It doesn't matter if it was small or big. What matters is that you look at your reaction, a signal, not as a flaw. Then ask, why did this touch me so strongly? Let the most honest answer appear, even if it seems clumsy or incoherent. Intense reactions are always clues to the shadow. Each time you answer not with pure logic, but with feeling, you are reaching into the unconscious and pulling a forgotten part toward the light. Jung once said that the unconscious is not a place to be analyzed, but a place to be in dialogue with. So after recognizing an emotion, you can speak to it as if it were a person. I see you. What do you want? What are you trying to tell me about myself? This way of talking may seem strange, but it is profoundly deep. When you speak with your unconscious as a subject, you allow it a voice that you have long suppressed. Next, move to the second question. Whose calling am I living by? Write down 3 things you are currently pursuing in your life, your career, your relationships, or a particular dream. Then place this question beside each of them. If no one watching, would I still want this? After that, you can try a small exercise. Imagine you are standing in a room with only yourself. No parents, no society, no friends, no lover, no one to prove anything to. In that room, you were the only one listening to your own voice. Ask, if I lived a life that only had to be true to me, what would I choose? The answer may not come right away. It may come as a vague image, a soft feeling in your chest, a small memory that warms you. That is the trace of the soul. And every time you touch that right feeling, even for a second, you are taking one step closer to the home where you belong. Finally, move to the third question. What am I willing to sacrifice to become myself? This is the question that asks you to pause for a long time, because it does not ask what you want. It asks what you dare to let go of. Ask yourself honestly, what do I know is no longer right for me, but I still hold on to because I'm afraid? That is where you need to look. Then continue. If I put this down, which version of me will come alive? Answering this question is not about taking immediate action. It is about realizing that what you are clinging to is not safety but habit, and what you think is sacrifice is in truth a return. One useful practice. Every night before you sleep, write a single sentence in your journal. Today, in what way was I honest with myself? This sentence may be small, but it is powerful. It pulls you out of the victim role. It brings you back to the role of creator. It reminds you that each act of honesty, no matter how small, is a brick laid in the construction of the person you want to become. If you want to go deeper, try the letter to the self exercise. Write a letter to your future self. The version who has lived authentically, has released borrowed callings, has stepped onto the path of the soul. Let that version speak back to you. What do you need to let go of to meet me? This two-way dialogue creates a safe space for the unconscious to speak. Because Jung believed our future has already existed in the unconscious for a long time, simply waiting for us to clear away enough layers for it to reveal itself. This practice is not meant to change you in a day. It is meant to create a state, the state of someone who observes themselves with honesty and kindness. When you maintain that state, Jung's 3 questions will no longer be theory. They become a compass. They become the inner navigation system that each time you touch, it points you straighter, steadier, and clearer toward the person you are becoming. In the end, everything you have just read is not a new self-help system, but a very ancient invitation to return to living true to yourself. Jung never promised that this journey would be easy. He only implied one thing: the cost of staying lost from your essence is far higher than the fear of change. You can keep walking the familiar road, reassuring yourself that this is good enough, even though somewhere inside you know you are betraying a very real part of yourself. The year 2026 will pass like any other year if the questions within you remain unanswered. The difference does not lie in the number on the calendar, but in the moment you truly answer. Do I dare to live a life that belongs to me? If the answer is yes, the journey has already begun in this very instant.